So next up, we're going to go back to Skype with Jennifer Bernstein. So hopefully you guys are oh, look at that. There you are.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we're ready to hear from you about 21st century cures.
Okay, before I begin with my presentation, I just want to thank Global Genes for putting up with my last-minute glitch in my travel schedule. So thank you for allowing me to Skype in. And again, I need to apologize that everybody has to look at this like 15-foot thing of my head. And I would like to thank my friends who posted it on my Facebook page. I will get you back. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the 21st Century Cures Initiative is. Carrie, do you want to flip to the next slide? It's really complicated to explain briefly what this is. This is everything. Congress is taking a look at how to get treatments into patients faster. So they're looking at this entire arc from early stages, from just securing funding, all the way through to the end where FDA approval process comes into play. This is actually being led by bipartisan efforts, which I'm shocked because I didn't think I'd ever see that again. But it's actually being led by Fred Upton, chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, who I talked about in my previous presentation, and Diana DeGette, who is a Democratic member of Congress from Colorado. Kind of went over earlier how Fred is so great on all of our issues. Diana is also really good. She has a daughter with juvenile diabetes, and she cares very deeply about, in particular, pediatric medicine development. So they're great people to be leading this effort. And like I said, this is everything in the kitchen sink. Next slide. So why all of a sudden is there an interest in this when I feel like, so many of us have been on the Hill talking about this for years? I don't know. I don't know why all of a sudden this came up. I don't really care why. Usually we have one really great shot to get something done, and it's every 5 years in the form of PDUFA reauthorization, which, as many of you know, because you've gone through it with me, it's a nightmare, and you don't even recover from it ever, and then there's like another reauthorization. So this is an unexpected opportunity to try and get something done within a relatively short amount of time. And I think the best way to sum it up is this quote from Chairman Upton and from Congresswoman DeGette, that they're concerned about a gap between the science and how the science is regulated, which I think every single person in the room has a story about this gap that exists, and it's getting bigger. And so we need to try and, I would say make it smaller, but I want to say eliminate it. So next slide, please. Everybody is involved in this process. And if you've seen any of the hearings or the roundtable discussions, you know that it's folks from FDA, folks from NIH, think tank people, it's academia, it's patient groups, it's everybody. And so this slide from Faster Cures, actually these numbers are probably a little bit larger now because this is from the middle of August, and there have been some other roundtables that have taken place since then. But you can see the broad scope of participants in this process. So this truly is covering every square inch of ground. Next slide. And why are all of these people involved? Because this is something that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a researcher at a university, if you're at a VC fund, if you're a patient. This arc that we're talking about, we all fall on it. We might be caring for somebody who's sick. We might have personal experience with it. All of us have a role to play here, which is why I am going to give you some homework in a few minutes on becoming involved with this process. Next slide. So what can you do with this initiative? The initiative is huge, and it's a little bit overwhelming because I think that it lacks focus, and understandably so, because this is such a huge area to look at. I talked to the committee before doing the presentation, and I said, look, I'm giving this presentation. What do you want from us? What can we do that's helpful to you? And they said, look, we know that we don't know everything, and there's no idea that it's too big or too small. We will consider everything. But we really would like some specific ideas. I think I'll get into in a couple of slides where to access the comments that have already rolled in on this, and a lot of them are very general. And so what the committee is looking for is a specific experience that you have had or an idea that you have to bridge this gap between basically evolving science and a non-evolving regulatory process. So there's lots of ways to participate. I'm going to give you one in a few minutes, but also, you can attend any of the in-district roundtables. I know that over the congressional recess period over the summer, there were roundtables in New Jersey and Illinois and Colorado and Florida. If there's one going on near you, you can attend those meetings. You can watch the hearings, which are live streamed on the committee's website. And all of the hearings and then the roundtables that have happened in DC are actually archived on the committee's website, and I'll show you how to get to that as well. And then the initiative is all over social media. The committee is doing a great job of tweeting and Facebooking and trying to rope people in through social media. And I'll show you all of the places to go to get that information in a couple of slides. But I think the important thing to note here is that this initiative, while it's huge and it's a little overwhelming because it kind of lacks a little bit of direction, is a wonderful opportunity for us because it's very rare that Congress will say, the doors are open, we want to hear all of your ideas. Usually I feel like when I'm going in to meet with an office about something, I'm fighting for something. Like we talked about with the Kids v. Cancer stuff. It's just, you're always fighting. And now it's like I don't have to fight to be heard because they're asking for our input. And I think that because this is a very rare opportunity, we all have a responsibility to weigh in because I don't think you can really complain about a process unless you participate. So says my dad. So you all have to weigh in on this. The other thing to remember is that the staff who are really working this issue are great people. I know a lot of them very personally. A lot of them are parents and are completely horrified by the things that I go in and tell them about what everybody in the rare disease community is dealing with. And so they get it. So don't be afraid to voice your opinion, to share your issues, to talk about your experiences because they are listening. Next slide, please. Here are all of the links to the social media and web initiative informations. It's all over the place, but if you just go to the committee's website, literally, like you just pop right into 21st Century Cures, just be sure that if you run a Facebook page for your organization, that you are reposting information about 21st Century Cures, getting that information out there to your constituency. We try to do that, we do that through RDLA. I'm always calling. I mean, a lot of you in the room have gotten phone calls from me saying, I want you to respond to this white paper for the committee. But we really need to do a better job, I think, of sharing what the committee is doing to try and just make sure that as many people within our community are as involved as possible. Next slide. And so this is the homework. I actually am going to stop talking. And I want everybody to, while this is fresh and while you're thinking about it, take a look at, in your binder, there is a form for submitting your comments to the Energy and Commerce Committee. The committee has okayed it that I am doing this, so it's not like I'm just going to go rogue and dump off like 300 letters to them. But I really want everybody to think about what it is that you want the committee to know about you, about what you're going through, recommendations that you might have to get treatments to patients faster, whatever it is. You can either submit this form to the folks at Global Genes before you leave, or if you're wired and you'd rather just email it to me, my contact information is on the form, and just put in the subject line 21st Century Cures. I'm going to collect every comment and I'm hand delivering them to staff, and they know I'm doing this. I think that this is, again, a unique opportunity to participate, but I have to ask that if you do fill out a form, that you provide your contact information, because it's entirely possible that staff are going to want to call you to get more information about whatever your situation is or whatever your idea is. And I want to be sure that they know how to reach you. So use clean language. Don't put anything crazy on there. But please do fill out the contact information so that you can be a resource to the staff if they need to follow up with you. And maybe you're not sure what to say. I have some ideas just to get you started. I know we had talked during my previous session about how increased funding is off the table. I don't care that it's off the table. You can talk about it anyway. I'm a little bit horrified at the fact that funding for FDA and NIH is not near what it should be. NIH in particular is very sensitive to funding decreases because they use a different inflationary index than the rest of us do, and it's higher. So when you see NIH get level funding from like one fiscal year to the next, it's actually a really big cut, and people don't realize that. And so while the committee has said we're not going to increase funding, we could talk about it anyway, because I'm not going to shut up about funding for NIH. And I'm also, going to continue to talk about funding for FDA. I think we all kind of like to beat up on FDA, and there's reasons to do that. I'm not saying there aren't, but you're tasking the agency with more and more responsibility, and they're not getting the funding that they need to keep up with what they're being asked to do. So if you want to talk about funding, talk about it, because they might say that it's not going to happen. And like I said, I will keep talking about it, and we all need to keep talking about it. Another idea to get you started, you might want to talk about enhancing the collaboration between agencies and industry and academia. I don't know. I mean, the Hill seems like a funny place to go and say you should force other people to collaborate, because you don't. But it's something that I think is important. I know some people have commented on it, but I think there should probably be more comments about that particular issue. Something else is increasing public awareness about clinical trials. I'm married to a scientist, and I wouldn't know where to go to get information about a clinical trial if I weren't married to a scientist. So I feel like a lot of us are just kind of left on our own to figure this out for ourselves. And so there has to be a better way to inform the public about trial opportunities that are out there. Another big issue for the rare disease community, you might want to talk about conflict of interest with, in particular, advisory committees at FDA. I mean, we're a huge community, but the problem is a lot of us anyway, are interconnected. There might only be a few researchers who work on a particular disease area. Maybe they're consulting with a company to develop a drug. Well, all of a sudden, those researchers who could provide so much expertise to an advisory committee are conflicted. So I feel like we get hosed a lot when it comes to the conflict of interest stuff, because so many people in our community who could be so helpful are just ruled out because of conflict. You might want to talk about somehow adopting the regulatory process to capture evolving science. So, one more thing I should also mention, off-label use. I know a lot of us don't have treatments for our diseases, but maybe there are symptoms, or maybe even the disease itself could be treated with something off-label, but your doctor can't talk to you about that. And pharmaceutical companies can't talk about that. And I feel like the government has cracked down so hard on off-label use discussions that it's so hard to get information now that you basically have to go find it yourself and then go ask about it. And when you're dealing with, caring for somebody who's sick, you don't have time to go find yourself a clinical trial, find yourself an off-label medicine. It's nuts. And I feel like, we need a little bit more help instead of, stymieing all of our efforts to get information. The information has to be more easily accessible because of everything that we're probably going through. Next slide. If you have questions about any of this, you can email me anytime. I'm always available to help with this. I'm constantly talking to committee staff about this. If you have a great idea in the middle of the night about what to do, don't call me, but you can email me. And I promise I can either help facilitate discussion with the staff, or I can take that information to the staff myself, whatever you would prefer. But just know that you can always get in touch with me if you want to weigh in on this, and that we're working really closely with the committee to try and make sure that our needs are captured in whatever legislative package is developed out of this, which we would expect to see next year. And now I have some time left. I'm actually going to log off and turn over the remainder of my time to you to start thinking about comments to the committee. I'm begging you guys to fill this out and send this in, because like I said, it's really the only chance that I recall seeing the committee welcome feedback. Usually they don't really want to hear it. But this is a very interesting and different situation, and I just urge everybody to participate while you have the opportunity. Are there any questions before I log off? Anybody? I can't tell. I'm just looking at myself. This is so creepy. Carrie, am I good to log off? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna log off, but like I said, you all have my contact information. If you need to reach me, you can at any time. And thank you for putting up with this jumbotron of my head. I am never gonna live this down on Facebook.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.